Okay, everyone, welcome to our fireside chat, Smart Winter Maintenance with the City of Oak Creek. Appreciate everyone joining today. My name is Eric Faulkner. I'm a meteorologist with Vaisala. I am happy to be joined by Tyler Berger, the Assistant Director of Public Works at the City of Oak Creek. So we have quite a few things to get into today. What I will say is any questions, please use the chat's disabled. So please use the Q&A section to ask your questions. And we're going to hold off on answering any of those questions until the end of our session today. So you can ask them as we're going along, but we'll hold off on answering any until we're finished up. The agenda. Tyler's going to give a quick introduction to the City of Oak Creek, just kind of an overview of the city, where they're located, their winter maintenance operations, any typical challenges they face. And then we're going to get into two specific weather events that they've had this year and how they've used the WX Horizon system and the CAS sensors to help with their decision making over the course of those events. So many of you on the call probably know what Vaisala Xweather does and what we do to help out winter maintenance professionals, but we do have newer technology through our CAS sensors that are pavement sensors and our WX Horizon system that offers road weather forecast to ultimately help snow fighters make the best decisions possible with enhanced data to help reduce cost and for a better quality of life. And as I mentioned, we're going to save the Q&A until the end. So feel free to ask your questions, but we'll hold off until the end. And just as a brief background on City of Oak Creek 2, Tyler and his colleagues have been using the WX Horizon system since the beginning of this winter. So it's still fairly new to them, and we're happy that they're joining today to give some of the feedback of what they've seen so far. So with that, Tyler, I will pass it off to you to give a little bit of a background of the city.
Thank you, Eric. As you mentioned, I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works. A little about me. This is my 24th year with the City of Oak Creek. I started fresh out of high school, moved along through the ranks up to Assistant Director overseeing our daily operations. One of the things that really caught me young in my career was not knowing why we did the procedures we did or the science behind everything. Luckily, I was able to go to a class about 8 years ago in smart salting, I think it was, and it made me realize there was more out in the winter maintenance world than I was taught. And from that point, I started taking classes and getting any tidbit of knowledge I could just to better our procedures, our outcomes, and continuing to maintain our high level of service. On with the City of Oak Creek. It's 28.4 square miles in size, located in the southeastern corner of Wisconsin on the west shore of Lake Michigan between Milwaukee and Chicago. Oak Creek is very unique in many ways. We're one of the fastest growing communities in Wisconsin with a 20% increase over the last 20 years. Our population is roughly 36,000. Being located on the western shore of Lake Michigan, we also see a lot of unusual weather patterns, especially in winter, ranging from rain events that are forecasted as snow, large lake effect snow totals, and pretty much everything in between. Lastly, not all the roads throughout the city are maintained by our Public Works Department. Wisconsin DOT contracts with the counties throughout the state to maintain interstates, state highways, and county roads. Oak Creek has 8 of those road types running through it. Our Public Works Department is responsible for plowing 316 lane miles of road, as you can see on Eric's display. Of those, actually, before I even go into that, those roads continue to grow, or the road lane miles continue to grow every year. I think for this year, we're adding probably close to 10 to 15 lane miles this year alone. Of those 316 lane miles, we anti-ice or pre-treat a little over a third of them. And as you can see, mainly our primary roads and our secondary roads or arterials and collectors are what we concentrate on. Some of the side streets are own schools, fire stations, police stations, so on. Spread across that 28.4 square miles or 22 routes consisting of arterials, collector roads, residential subdivisions, and business parks. Our fleet consists of 24 relatively newer single axle and tandem axle patrol wings, updated with computer controlled spreaders, pre-wet systems, and GPS. In addition to that larger fleet, we also have 3 smaller plow trucks for our turn lanes, alleys, and parking lots. So that is a brief snapshot of me and the city of Oak Creek.
Thanks, Tyler. That's great. So appreciate the background there. And before we get into some of these events, one question I did have for you too. Were there any particular, before WX Horizon, were there any particular challenges that you guys faced, maybe certain areas of your network or certain events that, caused you to think we might need to do some things differently based on what we're seeing? Has that happened over the past couple of years? And can you point to any of those challenges?
I guess as a whole, we recognized that we had challenges with the weather forecast that we were receiving. The data wasn't always correct. The predicted snow amounts were, I wouldn't say way off, but they weren't consistent with what we were being told from that organization or company. Part of the, and I'll talk about this probably later, one of our goals was to obtain data from our own road network so we could take our knowledge of winter maintenance and apply it to our operations, and without having, I guess, a temperature sensor in the ground, it was very hard. So that was one of our challenges, was trying to find a way to get our own road data.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously accuracy is a big deal, because the more accurate you can get in a forecast, the better decisions that you guys are going to be able to make. So with that being said, we'll go into the first event. So this was from January 9th of this year. And this was from the National Weather Service the day before. So it might be a little hard to see. I don't know if the screen's in the way, but this was from January 8th at about 3 Central Time. So I highlighted the city of Oak Creek. It's in this general vicinity down here. And this storm was interesting because it was a couple waves. So there was one wave that was expecting lighter snow, and then a heavier wave after that on the next day. So with this, the National Weather Service was expecting, roughly, if you take 2, and then this little blue area is about 4 to 6, so about 6 to 11 inches of snow, roughly. What the NWS was predicting the day before. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm going to exit the slide deck and go into the WX Horizon system to show you what Oak Creek was actually seeing within their account. So Tyler, here I have pulled up, this is about the same time roughly as that NWS forecast. And I just clicked on one of the locations. So this is West Sycamore here. But this is the forecast you were seeing from us compared to what you were seeing from the NWS. So I don't know if you want to give your opinion on what you were looking at here, if there were any, specific details in the data that you looked at to ultimately make the decision that you made, and how you tried to decide based on the differences you were seeing between what we were saying with WX Horizon and what locals in the NWS was saying.
I remember actually getting this forecast data from the National Weather Service the Sunday morning before this event. And ultimately, I remember calling you, Eric, Monday, asking, is this forecast right? Because there's a huge difference in what local weather is saying and what this is saying. But based off of that forecast, we did pre-treat our roads due to the snow that was predicted in there. We did our normal operations, which was loading up our fleet with salt and brine. Something that we did differently than we have ever done was let our operators know what WX Horizon was forecasting, allowing them to relax and say, hey, the pager's not going to go off at 2 a.m. because it's going to snow. Essentially, the forecast is showing us rain. So that was something we did differently, and it was appreciated amongst our staff. But looking at what we had, I was fully confident going into work that morning, seeing rain on the ground and going, this is going to be a rain event for most of it.
And I remember when you called that afternoon, Monday afternoon, and you were like, am I reading this correct? Because you were looking at the other forecasts and you were looking at ours and you were like, it looks like it's going to mainly be wet. And just to give everyone on the call some sense of what you're looking at here. So this is the surface state. So I'll go over to the precipitation tab so you can see it a little bit easier. So WX Horizon was projecting precipitation to start later that night on January 8th. And you can see a mix of both rain and snow, really. And Tyler, I think that's what you had for the majority of the event, correct? Was a mix of rain and snow, or some very sloppy snow.
Yep.
And what we're doing here is we're telling you what the surface is projected to be. So this blue curve is water on the surface. So we were mainly projecting that the road surface would remain only wet, given the forecast that we were seeing, and given the conditions on the roadway that we were expecting and the surface temperatures. So just wanted to give everyone a background of how you can read what's on the system to make those decisions. I'm going to flip back here to the PowerPoint. Okay, so that was the forecast going back. You guys see it here. And then this was what was actually observed. So if I flip back really quick, there was a large, swath of 6+ inches forecasted across most of Wisconsin, really. There were areas that got 6+ inches over here to the west, but really around the Oak Creek area, you guys saw what? An inch, two, a couple, maybe?
Maybe an inch and a half. It was spotty all over the place.
So definite over forecast, obviously. And that's not to say that the National Weather Service is bad. I'm not here to bash the National Weather Service. There's reasons why they put out the forecast that they do. And they're also focused on the public generally, and they're also focused on how much snow will fall and what will accumulate on the grass, not necessarily the roadway. So that is also the difference between us. We're kind of focused on the road where they're focused on the grass. So this is a report that Tyler made based off of that event. So Tyler, why don't you go ahead and explain what we're seeing here?
So here is a report that we do after every snow event that we have. It captures what kind of event, whether or not we pre-treated, when the snow or ice, whatever you want to say, is falling out of the sky, when that starts and ends, when our crew starts and ends, how many units we put out, what our spread rates are, our liquid blend percentage, and then it captures the forecast at the start and throughout the actual event when our crew is out. And then an event description at the end, kind of capturing what we did and why we did it, and then what our costs are for labor and materials.
So this winter event total cost is the total cost that you guys spent during that event, right?
Correct.
So making some of the different decisions that you made, would you say that you guys were able to reduce the cost had you used, I don't know, maybe the previous system or used that National Weather Service forecast?
This is actually kind of a simple comparison. When we switched over to WX Horizon, I still kept a free version that the state DOT has for our old weather program, just to compare and see what the differences were. And if I would have followed our old program at 7 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier, we would have had crews out putting salt down, because there was a little bit of slippery, slushy areas. And following our old operations, that's what usually we would see at the beginning of the storm. So we would hit the roads hard at the beginning and then kind of make decisions as we went. So with following the new forecast models that we're getting, and we even said from the beginning, we're going to stick to what we're seeing. We're not going to stick with our old ways. We're going to make the changes now. It was hard not to do the old, all right, send everybody out and make sure that the roads are good, but we actually stuck with it, and it saved us at minimum 80 tons of salt.
Yeah.
Which equaled out to be essentially a year subscription on this.
Yeah. And I mean, that's great to hear too, because salt reduction is another important thing. You guys are right by the lake as well, so you've got runoff there too. So just another benefit, I guess, that could be utilized here. Going to the next event. This one's a little bit different than the previous one. I think there was some freezing rain involved with this one, right, Tyler?
Yes, it was a complete freezing rain event.
Yeah.
With a curveball in there.
Yeah. So I pulled this event too because it was kind of interesting to see this. This is our connected car data. So if you were on our last webinar, I talked a little bit about connected car data, but this was data coming real time, air temperature data from vehicles in the area. And you could see that most of the vehicles were reporting temperatures above freezing for the most part. But if you looked at the surface temperatures, all of the surface temperatures were below freezing. So with that liquid precipitation falling out of the sky, it was allowing it to freeze on contact. I can go back to the system really quick to show you what the forecast was, but Tyler, my question for you is, with not only WX Horizon, but with the sensors too, and being able to get those pavement temperatures in real time for an event like that, where air temp is above freezing, and pavement temp is below freezing. Was that really helpful to have that in real time?
Absolutely. I can actually kind of go through the process on the storm. If you're all right with me, and I don't need to jump over you. We ended up dispatching 23 units about at 4:30 our time for icy conditions. My on-call supervisor actually was alerted by a notification through the WX Horizon system, beating our police department, who were actually out on the roads, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. Pavement temperatures at the start of our operation were about 32 degrees-ish. They fluctuated a little bit, but right around freezing. I want to say about 7:30 in our northern region, some of the operators were reporting kind of a refreeze condition, which then caused me to check out pavement temps throughout the city in our different quadrants, and they were ranging from 30.4 to 31.9 in the north and kind of trending to the southeast. Obviously by the lake, the temperatures of the lake are a little bit warmer, so they were still pretty steady at 32. But essentially it caused me to tell our fleet to, hey, rerun all of our routes. Typically on an event like this, our operators would run the route and just park the trucks knowing that, hey, we just freshly treated the roads. In this event, the data helps keep the trucks on the road longer and in place longer to actually treat that refreeze.
So both events were clearly different. And one, it helped you limit the amount of time people are on the, or your crews are on the roads, limit the amount of salt. And then this one, it helped you understand that, hey, the roads are still in really poor condition. We need to do what we can do to make sure those roads are safe for our residents to drive on, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's like a both type of scenario there. Okay. Let me go back to the deck. And sorry that I'm jumping around here. This was, again, that same event, January 23rd. Another report that Tyler ran for that event. And Tyler, go ahead if you want to touch on any of the details here.
I guess the biggest one was the amount of time that the crew was out on the road for us. It's longer than it normally would be for a typical salting operation, but knowing that we had a refreeze in there and ultimately it kept the crews on the road. That's the biggest part of this one. There still is significant savings on this one as well, but basically it's a double the cost on a single salting operation. So I kind of dabbled with most of what we did in the event description when I was explaining what was the benefit to it. So.
Okay, great. So those are the two events that we wanted to go through today. And keeping an eye on time here, we have about 9 minutes left. We're going to move shortly to the Q&A portion, but I do have some questions for Tyler. Again, just to give you guys a background of what they're doing at the City of Oak Creek and how they, started with this program. So Tyler, I know it hasn't been implemented for very long at this point. It's been what, since I think October, November, around that time frame where you guys started?
Beginning of October.
Beginning of October, where you guys started this.
Yep.
So what has been, I guess, not only the process of implementing this type of program, but the time it has taken to get up to speed with how to read the data?
The process honestly was very easy. I think the hardest part for our organization was figuring out if we needed to have approval from our city council to make the purchase. We were looking for means of obtaining real-time pavement information, as I said before, and we were looking for an accurate weather forecast. This system has provided both. As far as installation of the sensors took a data install, and that was 5 of them. The program was learned by my staff within about a day or two, and it's to the point now that every single day we have a supervisor that checks for any updates on weather forecasts or even whether that's on the horizon coming in the next few days.
That's important to know too, because I mean, any change is always difficult, right? And especially when you're moving to a new system right ahead of the winter season, when you're not used to the type of information it's going to give you or how you're going to make decisions off of it. So it's good to know that you guys were able to, catch on pretty quickly and how to utilize the data, and the fact that the implementation process was pretty simple too.
Yeah, I mean, my staff absolutely loves the text messages that they're getting, or I guess the notifications that they're getting saying, "Hey, there's an issue out on the road. Hey, we need to go check this."
Yeah, that's great. So future expectations, I guess, for the city itself, some expectations you have within winter maintenance, and then even some expectations that you would have from us too at Vizsla Xweather. Do you have any sense of what those might be?
I'm going to continue with our ongoing expectations for our operations, and that's continue to lower salt usage, find ways to whether it's adding more brine to our spread rates or integrating more technology into our program in general. That's been our goal, is to, I guess, embrace as much technology that we can and utilize it to benefit our operations. As far as WX Horizon, I guess I'd like to see a little bit more data from the regional networks that are nearby, mainly to help prepare for events that are coming. Seeing conditions in western Wisconsin or Iowa would allow me personally to start formulating a plan or plans well in advance. With the new car data that started within the last few weeks or maybe month or so, I'd like to see more vehicle, I guess, brands added to that system to get more information, more data, which will allow me to pinpoint more trouble spots before they're reported. Car accidents, you name it, slippery spots. But it would also, allow me to confirm that the treatment that I selected was working effectively or not, and allowing me to make a decision to rerun that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, a lot of things that technology is kind of just the direction everyone's moving to, AI, and we're doing the best we can to continue to work with technology and push it to help that decision making as best as we possibly can. So it's good feedback and good to hear some of those things that you guys are trying to do. The last thing that I want to ask you too, and we have about 5 minutes left. For someone, it's interesting because you were on the other side of this call back in the summer, I believe, when we were doing one of these webinars. I believe Zan was in your seat. Now you're in the hot seat.
Yep.
And at the time, Zan was talking about the benefits and everything and what they have seen. So if someone's thinking right now, like, okay, technology is great. This is cool. But, this is something that's going to be way too costly or way too time consuming for us to get used to. I guess based on your experience so far, like what would you say to that person?
Honestly, the selling point that got us on board was from that webinar with Zan. The event that we just talked about, the first one from the beginning of January, was very similar to what he had in Independence, Missouri. With what we saved on not sending our fleet out for that first round of treatment, it speaks for itself. I mean, we were able to pay for 1 year off of the savings that we saved in salt. In addition to that, the forecast data that were provided is allowing us to use lower spread rates, which it's not, I guess it's not being wasted on a short use material. It's allowing us to look into better technology for our staff.
Mhm.
Me personally, it has changed our operations to the point where it's so easy to come up with plans. It's allowing me more time to focus on other aspects of our winter maintenance. I mean, if anything, I've had less headaches, to be honest with you.
Well, that's always
and
a
more
good thing.
and more time to plan or look into technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's blended right in for us.
Less headaches are always a good thing. That's important.
Yes. I mean,
Mental
honestly,
sanity.
I feel like we've been using this for, instead of a few months, a few years.
Yeah.
That's how well it has actually integrated into our operations.
Well, that's great to hear, Tyler. And I appreciate all of your expertise with this too, and your feedback. And we've got a couple of minutes left for questions. So I want to turn it over to the Q&A section. So we have a few questions in here right now. So the first one is, what was the approximate cost to the community to transfer to this system? How long to recuperate these expenses, and what form did they take? So that one would be for you, Tyler.
I guess the cost to the citizens, it was relatively minimal comparing it to what we were paying for before. I mean, essentially it was double the cost, but by, again, saving 80 tons of salt and not putting it on the road, that's what, a little over $5,000-6,000 that we could put towards implementing this system.
Yeah. Second question here, isn't a big factor here related to the scale resolution of the forecast? You're more capable of factoring in the temperature differences related to the proximity to the lake and the differences in elevation, while NWX forecasts are more coarse. Yes, Doug, that is correct. So one of the main differences between like us and NWS, for example, is the quality of the forecast. And again, they're not bad. They're good at what they do, but they're also doing it for a different reason. For winter maintenance professionals like Tyler and others, they're really concerned about what's happening on the roadway. So we're able to improve that forecast on the road using these sensors and incorporating that data into our forecast. And when you're talking about being up against the lake, there's so many little minute and unique differences between the locations along the lake because the water impacts it, that NWS possibly can't possibly account for all those within the normal weather models that we have. So I think that's why our system is helping a little bit more for the resolution, because we're putting sensors right there. Okay, another question. How much support has Vizsla given to assist the community in adapting to the new technology? What types of support? I don't know, Tyler, if you want to talk about that one.
I think the support that we've gotten from Vizsla has been phenomenal. I had questions with their old program, and it was, well, you got to talk to so and so would give me a little bit, and I'd have to go to somebody else. With this, when I've had a question, I literally, I can either email or call Eric, and it's either done through a virtual meeting or over the phone. In fact, we've had one of our sensors went down for some reason, and I think you and I can both agree we have no idea why it's not properly working. You guys caught it before I did, and you were right there. All right, here's the solution we have.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's all the questions. We're also a minute over time, so I want to be conscious of that. If anyone else does have any other questions, I'll share my screen really quick again. If you guys can see here, my email's right here, eric.faulkner@vaisala.com. Tyler's email's down here, so if you do have any questions for him. I also have a few links up here as well. This recording will be sent out, so you guys will have these links, but we are still offering that free trial of WX Horizon if there's any winner left, which that's questionable at this point. So we have that WX Horizon free trial if you want to check it out. The other thing I want to mention too is we have a new page on YouTube where we're producing content. So they'll be generic in general, but I produce forecast videos ahead of specific events just to tell you where the impacts will be the worst. So you go to youtube.com/@VaisalaXweather, and it will be under playlists, roads and weather. It's free to subscribe, so it's just additional content that you guys can look at. And we're also going to be creating some other content like over summer and stuff that are related to roads and road weather. The other thing I put on here too is the Oak Creek link for their public works department. So you can follow that and check out anything new that they're doing. So with that, I know we're over time. So I appreciate everyone's time today. Really, thank you for joining, Tyler. Really appreciate it. Again, it's been great to hear your experience and your, I guess, use with the system so far. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please shoot us an email, and appreciate you joining, and have a great rest of your day.